It's so funny in animation because we would do like a big, Hank football. We do a big football episode with a lot of people in the crowd, and James would be like, okay, this is really straining the animators. We can't do another big one next week. So the next week we'd go, look, this is a very simple episode. It mostly takes place in the house. It's a very personal story between Hank and Bobby. And he's like, ooh, that's going to strain the animators. It's going to
Yeah.
require a lot of acting. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so wait, we can't do anything?
You're listening to Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Screenwriters Need to Hear This, the podcast. I got another amazing guest today. I'm here with my next guest has been my boss on many occasions. He's been my friend on one occasion. And he's here he is. Boy, this guy's got good credits. So this is Dave Krinsky, and he's a feature writer, show creator. He ran King of the Hill for, what was it, 8 years, 8 seasons?
Yeah, I think maybe 7. I can never quite keep track.
Felt like 8, right? He was a showrunner for King of Hill for many seasons, but a writer. I think you wrote on every single season, didn't you?
Yeah, we came in right after the first season had just aired. So
Right.
They were still rewriting and posting season 1 and starting writing season 2.
Jumping right in. And then also, we're going to talk about everything, but I want to give you a proper introduction. You co-wrote with his partner, Blades of Glory. They ran a show called Lopez, which I worked on for a little bit. Created Silicon Valley. I've heard of that show. Also, The Good Family. That was ABC animated show. Ran Beavis and Butthead for a while. Executive produced a movie called Extract. What else did you do? You did a lot of stuff, man.
Blades of Glory, did you mention that?
Wait, I thought I said that. Didn't I not say
Maybe
that?
you did. I
That was
tuned you
the
out.
point.
I've learned to tune you out early, so.
But man, oh man, but you also said when we were chatting before we started recording that you did a lot of movie rewrites. I didn't even know you guys did other movie rewrites.
Yeah, so when we first came out, this was back, like 90s, you really had to decide where you were a movie writer or a TV writer. The agents didn't even talk to each other. So we had come out with some movie scripts. We just thought that was sort of the easiest way to break in.
Right.
And we had ended up selling a couple. We sold one to Warner Brothers. It was they bought it for Chevy Chase.
Really?
And and then we got
And they
fired.
didn't make it, obviously, because
They didn't make it. We got fired, and they hired someone else to rewrite it. And our agent goes, "That's great news." And we're like, "How's that great news?" They go, "It's not dead. If they're hiring someone else to rewrite it, and it was kind of an A-list writer, then that means it's still alive." But it ended up not getting made. Although it's sort of been made a few times because it was a very broad idea about a guy who, how we only use 10% of our brain's potential. Well,
Right.
These scientists developed a serum that unlocked the other 90%. Instead of being injected in a, good upstanding citizen like Michael Jamin, it gets injected in this doofus Chevy Chase, who basically becomes this like throbbing organism. He's got 10 times the sight, 10 times the hearing, 10 times the athletic ability. So he's trying to like make money and become famous with it.
But so he was attached before there was a director, or no?
So there was never even a director manager. He was attached. Like Chevy Chase had a deal at Warner Brothers, and Warner was looking for movies for him. So and then those days they were buying spec scripts left and right.
Right.
So they bought that from us, and we spent like a long time rewriting it.
So he was giving you the notes on what he wanted.
No, we never even met with him. I think, I don't even know if he ever heard of it, to be honest. It really was in those days. If you wanted a Chevy Chase movie, you bought 10 or 12 scripts and you developed them until you found one that you wanted to do and brought to him.
So you were dealing with his development people.
We were just dealing with Warner Brothers.
What?
Warner Brothers and the producer. So like the way it worked back then, and maybe they still do now, but the spec script market isn't really strong anymore. You would go to your agent with a spec and they'd go, okay, we're going to send it to X producer who has a deal at Paramount and Y producer who has a good relationship with Warner Brothers. And they're going to go to the studios all in the same weekend and let them know they have to decide. And then hopefully you get at least 2 offers so that you're playing them against each other. In that particular instance, we only got one from Warner Brothers. So the producer on the project, we never even met until Warner Brothers had bought it. So then the producer, and it was a weird deal because we actually had a better relationship with the execs at Warner Brothers than we did with the producer. Like we like their notes better. So it's a weird political dynamic that you had to deal with. But we ended up selling a couple of projects that way that didn't get made. But ultimately when Blades of Glory got made, then it was a ton of rewrite work.
And then, but this was during King of the Hill?
Blades of Glory was during King of the Hill. I mean, we were doing our movie stuff before King of the Hill started, and we started looking around. We sold stuff, but John and I were still sharing an apartment in Burbank, and I was driving a car with no air conditioning, and I looked over at some of my buddies like Bill Martin, who was like buying a house and buying a nice car, and those guys were all on TV. And John and I were like, maybe we should. I mean, we always wanted to do TV, but our agents just, you're movie writers. So we ended up writing some TV spec scripts and then ended up getting a job in TV. But so we were writing spec scripts, we would get assignments occasionally, or we would pitch on something, but it wasn't until Blaze of Glory that really was like, okay, now we're getting a ton of movie rewrite.
And then how did you know Bill Martin? Did you go to college with him?
Yeah, we went to college together. So it was weird. It was me, John, Bill, Peyton Reed, who directed all the Ant-Man movies, this guy John Schultz, who directed like Mike, and it's like we all kind of moved out here at the same time to try to pursue the business.
Wow, I didn't even know that. And then, so when did you decide that you wanted to be a writer, like in high school or something?
Pretty much. I mean, this is gonna make me sound really cool, but I loved reading as a kid. I loved, books, and I just loved when a story really impacted me and made me think. I was like, wow, that's a cool sort of power to have over people, to influence them that way. So since the time I was like 12, 13, I thought about it. And then in high school, we had to write a short story for an English class. And I wrote this kind of science fiction, funny story. And the teacher, wrote A+, what are you going to do with this gift? And I was like, oh, I guess it actually could be a job, right?
Did you think that it could be a job? Like that didn't occur to me until I was older that you could make money in TV.
Well, you know what? I was thinking I'd be a book writer. And so I went to Carolina because I knew they had a strong English department. I took all the creative writing classes there. And since I didn't want to really do anything else, I took whatever course I found. So screenwriting was one, playwriting was one. And that's where I met John Altschul, my partner, and David Palmer, who I worked with out here a bit.
Wow, you were serious about it. Did you have to apply to those programs?
Yeah, no. I mean, I got accepted to the honors program, which was what I had applied for. And because of that, I got to get into some of the writing classes I wouldn't have had access to anyway.
So this was all or nothing for you. I mean, there was no plan B.
Well, my mom was always like, why don't you go to law school? You have something to fall back on. But I knew if I had something to fall back on, I'd probably fall back on it, and it took us a while to get, really established to the point I could get rid of that crappy car with no AC in the apartment with no AC. But if I had had the ability or the degree to do anything else, I probably would have bailed on the writing dream earlier.
Right. Wow. And then so eventually you decided to move into TV. And then how did you get your first gig?
So we decided to move into TV. We wrote a couple of spec scripts, and I think it was Bill Martin who said, oh, you should meet Carolyn Strauss over at HBO. And Carolyn, of course, was at the vanguard of starting HBO when it was.
Yeah. Wait, so he's setting up meetings for you? Like he's like your agent now, Bill?
No, it really was one of those things where it was like, we're like, hey, we want to get into TV too. He goes, oh, well, you should meet Carolyn Strauss. We like her. She's really cool. And I think he might have told her, oh, you should meet these guys.
Okay.
And so we had a general with her. And which is a good lesson is like, I think we always had something to pitch. We always knew a general, everybody, wants something. I can't remember if we pitched anything too specifically or not. Because in movies, you always want to pitch an idea. Sometimes in TV, it really is just a general to see what, but, it was a great meeting and nothing came of it. And then like 9 months later, we got a call from her and she goes, look, we're doing a show. The showrunner really wants movie guys, doesn't want like just TV sitcom guys. Wow. And I thought of you guys. You look at the pilot. They shot a pilot. And I sent the pilot over. It was a black and white period single camera show. David Letterman was the executive producer. Adam Resnick was the showrunner, the creator. And it was awesome. It was like the Coen brothers, really dark, funny. And we were like, yeah. So she set up a call with us. We talked to Adam for like an hour and a half, mostly about Goodfellas and The Godfather and just movies. And then they called us up. Karen Cross goes, look, the show's in New York. Will you move there? And we're like, yeah, we'll move there. She goes, okay, 3 or 4 days. Can you move? And we're like, yeah, we don't have, I don't even think we got a plant in our place, or fresh food. So we moved to New York.
And you got out of your rent? Or do you not remember?
We sublet because it was I think it was a 10-episode order that became an 8-episode order, which is now, the norm. But then was like, okay, so we're only going to be there probably 9 months of production. So we figured, why give up our place?
Do you think if it wasn't a good show, you would have taken, if it was a bad show, you would have taken the offer?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably not. Before this happened, we were in the movie biz. We had a meeting with Pauly Shore,
Right.
And Paulie's manager was in the meeting, and his manager was a gentleman named Michael Rotenberg, who is now my manager, and Michael and Sievert have,
Sometimes he's our manager.
dealt with them. And he was an executive on King of the Hill, so this was before King of the Hill even. And we pitched Paulie. The New Line wanted to do a movie where Paulie basically they they wanted him to be a nanny, and we pitched like Sound of Music with Paulie going around Europe, and Paulie was as insulting and just not a good collaborator. He was just like, hey, who are these greasy weasels? And he just goes, no, just turn the camera on and I'll be funny. And we're like, okay. But John, I think, had like $93 in his bank account. I might have had a little bit more, and they offered it to us, and we were like, this could be our career path that we don't want to be on, and we turned it down. So I think if it was a crappy show, we probably would have turned it down too.
Right. Wow, you turned it down because I think now you take anything you can get.
Yeah, well, certainly
not you, but what one does, right?
And it's not bad advice. You got to get in the game, So we had already been in the game just enough that it wasn't like we were completely unknown. We hadn't anything produced, so we certainly weren't a hot commodity.
Right.
But we really felt like, oh, this could just pigeonhole us. And it was interesting because our agent was like, okay, if you don't want to do it, fine. But we don't really want to be rude and turn it down. So we're going to ask for way more money than they'll ever pay you.
Right.
So they went and asked for, I don't know, like $400,000, and they were furious anyway. They're like, who the hell do you think you are asking this? And we're just like, sorry, we just don't want to do it. So
right. How funny. Were you when you first got on King of the, or I guess not, well, I guess, on Resnick's show, did you find it you were in over your head? I mean, that's how I felt when we started.
Oh yeah, because I was always that one of those writers, and I'm sure there's plenty like that. I'm like, even in college where you had to like give your scripts or your stories to people to read, I'm like, I don't want to do this, because I just didn't have the confidence or faith in myself. So we got to New York, and we were working at a Letterman's theater, and Adam's great. I mean, he is the nicest guy, and just super small staff. There's John and I, this other team, and this guy, Vince Calandra.
Right.
And I just remember like sitting in the writer's room, not saying a word, because I was like, I don't want to say the wrong thing and look like an idiot. And in all honesty, when I got to King of the Hill, I looked around and I was like, I recognize names from seeing him on The Simpsons and, Mike Judge, of course. And I was inhibited there too. And I barely pitched, I think, for the first couple of months I was there.
Really? And then what was the moment when you felt like you could test the waters?
Well, what happened was I was just hanging out enough. Like, so in the lunchroom, I got to be friendly with people, and people would go out for a drink. And then it suddenly was a social thing, and I was comfortable in that, and I could start being funny that way. So by the time I got back to the room after a couple of months, it was kind of like, oh, I was just bullshitting with my friends, and it was much easier to pitch because it felt safer.
I'll say, because I remember on King of the, we had some interns where people would sit in pitching, and I'm like, how do they get over their fear of pitching when they haven't been hired as a writer?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a good question for young writers, and I'm teaching a class down at Chapman now, and I'm like, it's a tricky situation when you're a new writer. You want to talk because you want to prove you're worthy, but if you talk too much or talk poorly, it doesn't do you any good. And it really, in my opinion, as a showrunner, I would rather you be quiet and sort of take it all in and pitch very occasionally than feel like you've got to pitch stuff that ends up derailing the room.
I totally agree with you. One thing I've said, because I think let's say there's 10 writers in a room, and a staff writer often thinks, well, I better speak a tenth of the time because there's 10 people here. But they're not getting paid a tenth. They're not getting paid as much as the co-executive producer. They don't have to contribute as much,
Yeah, and it's not expected. Like, I've seen plenty of horrible showrunners who are punitive, and they don't make it easy for a staff writer, and they're happy to fire a staff writer every season and try someone else. But John and I have always been like, look, we're going to bring you on board. We're going to be patient with you. It's like, it's not an easy position to be in. And when you're a showrunner, all you want is someone to make your life easier. And if a staff writer makes your life easier one time in a season, it's almost like, okay, you know what? I got something out of you. Great.
What about that leap from, because I was there for that. You were, I guess it was season 6 you started running it. Is that right?
Yeah, 6, 7 was our first official year running it, really.
What was it like for you making the leap? Because, everyone, you always think I could do this job. I could do the job better than my boss. And then you become the boss and you're like, wait a minute, this is hard.
Yeah. Well, I remember when on that Resnick show, there was a consultant there, and he told us, he goes, the punishment for writing well is producing. And it's like, you work your way up and you become a producer, and suddenly, yeah, you're managing people, you're dealing with all the politics, the budget. And I think the biggest thing that happened to me was we were working, and I can't remember if you were in the room or not. Do you remember Collier's episode about that Michael Keaton did with the pig
Yeah,
czar?
I was there for we probably got there for the animatic part of it, so we didn't break it.
Okay, so it was a really weird story, and Collier's a
Yes.
great writer, but this was one that was
Crazy.
trouble from the get-go just because it was so bizarre.
Yes.
And I remember we were working super late trying to get to it, and I think Rich Appel was running the show at that point, and he and
Yeah.
Greg were developing a show, and they left the room, and everybody left the room. There was like four of us in there, and I think Greg or Rich said, Dave, you get on the computer. And in King of the Hill, the room, it wasn't like a conference room, it was like a big, almost like living room with a scattered furniture, and one person sat there. It kind of ran the room. We didn't have the screen showing the script, which I never liked anyway. And I was like, I don't think I can run a room.
Mhm.
And I got up there and I was just like, I just did what I had to do. And I remember we, spent a few hours. It was late night, and we kind of like gave the script to Rich and Greg, and they came and go, this is great. This is working. And it was like, oh, geez. So I guess I can do it.
Right.
So when we took over the show, yeah, I mean, it definitely was like so many things were harder than you would think, but some were easier too. I remember the other showrunners before we run the show would come back from pitching the stories to the network, and they go, well, we sold 6 out of 7 of them. So, it wasn't easy. And then when we started pitching to the network, the show had been on for 6 years. They're like, okay, good. It was like, oh, this isn't that hard.
Right.
The hard parts were, managing the budget, managing people, managing writers, dealing with the network.
How much budget were you dealing with? Like, what were
How
you
big was it?
like? Well, no, I mean, like, what exactly were you doing?
Oh,
Yeah, because I don't really touch when we were running stuff. We don't really touch the budgets. But what do you?
oh, so I mean, first there was the writer's budget, which every
Okay,
year was
that.
like, yeah, okay, like who can we afford to pay? But I mean, a lot of it, you'll remember our line producer, Jimsy, would walk in and be like, you know what? Last episode had a football crowd, and this episode you want to do, whatever, a crowd scene at the school. We can't afford that. The budget won't,
Right.
So a lot of it was making creative decisions based on the limitations. Although it's so funny in animation because we would do like a big, Hank football. We do a big football episode with a lot of people in the crowd, and McJim's was like, okay, this is really straining the animators. We can't do another big one next week. So the next week we'd go, look, this is a very simple episode. It mostly takes place in the house. It's a very personal story between Hank and Bobby. And he's like, ooh, that's going to strain the animators. It's going to require a lot of acting.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so wait, we can't do anything?
There's always a reason. That's right. There's always a reason why you're going to ruin the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's so. And now, and then so so then after King of the Hill, which you guys did for many years, then it went down. Then went down for. I was probably a couple of years. It went down, right?
I don't remember if it was a couple years because, yeah, so the show did not get picked up.
Right.
And then they moved John and I and Clarissa, our assistant, onto the lot into this crummy little office to finish posting the shows.
Right.
And so we were there posting the shows, and we never left. I mean, by the time we it's not like we were like home and done. Before we left there, they picked the show up again for another run.
What was the thinking behind canceling and then picking it up again? Like, why?
From what I hear, it's so, Fox Network ran the show. 20th Century Fox was the studio who owned the show.
Right.
And apparently the heads of the studio got big bonuses when they got new shows on the air that were successful. So they weren't making a ton of money
Personally.
And the other thing, apparently they owned and operated, because everything was syndicated, in those days, the package was so high for them to pay as the show got on that they were like, wow, we got to renegotiate this deal. So when everybody started renegotiating, it seemed like, okay, let's not do it. And then ultimately, I bet it was Ari Emanuel fought for it because he was always fighting for it. Or maybe it was Rotenberg, but yeah, it's whatever. They just decided, okay, they made a deal and picked us back up again.
And at that point, it was a lot of new writers. Well, most of the writers had moved on, but you were still on the show. So because you kind of restarted, the staff was almost, as I remember, it was almost brand new. There's only a couple previous writers. Like Christy Stratton was there.
I think Christie was there, Kit was there, Kit Balch, Garland
Oh,
Testa.
Garland was there. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, so there was definitely a core group. I remember, like, I can't remember if Tony and Becky came on.
Right.
I don't remember if that was before that or not. So I think enough people, it might have been like nowadays there's not really a staffing season, but I think it might have been during a non-staffing season that enough people hadn't landed somewhere that we could get them
Right.
back.
Right. And then after that, you guys did The Good Family.
Yeah, so that was another, people wanted an animated show from us. We had, we'd gotten very close to Mike on King of the Hill, so started working together a lot with him. And we had this show, The Good Family, about a very PC family, sort of the opposite of Hank Hill. And I just remember, everybody's like, okay, take it to Fox and it'll run for forever. And it was just like, we just wanted to do things differently. And MRC, an independent, studio, came after us pretty hard and said, no, we want to do this deal. We can finance it and you can have a better upside and more freedom. And so we decided to do it. We pitched it around and ABC just made such a hard press for it.
Wow.
And yeah. And it turns out they weren't the best partners simply because they didn't have any animation on. They put us on with a really bad animated show, like after Wipeout or something. It was just like not a good fit. So, but it ends up, the bottom fell out of the industry right after that, because Rodenberg would call us up and goes, your numbers would be a top 10 show. Like within 2 years, we would have been like fine. But at that moment, it just wasn't good enough numbers.
And then they brought back Beavis and Butthead, which you guys ran, which was so interesting because that was a whole different experience. That was all freelance. That's why you guys called us. Hey, you want to write a Beavis and Butthead? We're like, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to have an opportunity to do that, right? Yeah. So they're always begging Mike to bring it back, and he was always like, the situation has to be right. And he just felt like the timing was right, and he had some stories he wanted to tell, and he loves doing them. I mean, as he always said, King of the Hill requires a ton of effort for a little bit of output. Beavis requires a little bit of input for a ton of output. People just love it, and it's funny. So I mean, the budgets weren't super high, and we couldn't license music anymore. I mean, and when Mike originally did it, it was all music videos because MTV owned all those videos.
Right.
But the world had changed, so suddenly we were doing Jersey Shore and a lot of other like reality shows because that was the only sort of material we could get.
But we did like, because I remember you guys brought us in. There's a couple women in Detroit. It was So Cold in the D. They had a song, So Cold in the D.
Cold in the D, yeah.
And I don't remember how it happened, but I think I commented on her, maybe on her YouTube channel or something. I go, this is a great song. And she went nuts. She's like, oh, thank you so much. So
yeah, it was a weird sort of viral hit, I think almost before things really went viral. And it was just like a homemade video about, living in Detroit. And
how did you find all that stuff?
Mike had found it and just thought it was really funny and really interesting. And
so he was just surfing the internet looking for like real cheap stuff that he could get.
I don't even think it was like with an eye toward Beavis and Butthead. He also was in this little network of like Knoxville and Spike Jones. They all like send each other stuff. So I don't know where he got it from, but I think he just saw it. And you know what? I don't know. He's never said, but that might have been the impetus to bring Beavis back, where he's just like, oh my God, they would have so much fun with this.
Hey, it's Michael Jamin. If you like my videos and you want me to email them to you for free, join my watch list. Every Friday, I send out my top 3 videos. These are for writers, actors, creative types. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. I'm not going to spam you, and it's absolutely free. Just go to michaeljamin.com/watchlist.
And then, so then what came after that?
So yeah, Blades of Glory was in the middle of the King of the Hill era. And then I guess Silicon Valley really would be the next big thing that.
How did you guys come up with that idea, which is a pretty big hit?
Yeah, so that was an interesting confluence of events where Mike had been in talks with HBO. They really wanted to do something with him, and Scott Rudin wanted to do something in sort of the gaming space. So they were sort of circling around this tech world, and Mike's like, I'm not a gamer, I don't know that well, but Mike was an engineer, electrical engineer, so he knew that world well. But John was reading the the Steve Jobs book by Walter Isaacson and saw this quote in the book where it's like Bill Gates was making fun of Steve Jobs because he can't even code.
Yeah.
So John had this idea, he goes, well, that's a really funny world. And his brother was an electrical engineer, so he knew that world as well. And, so we pitched an idea to Mike doing something like that. Mike goes, oh, I would love to do that. So then when we pitched it to HBO, they were like, yeah, this sounds great.
Sorry, so you wrote the pilot, shot it, and then like what people don't understand is like the process for shooting a pilot, or like it's a big deal. It's like a lot of work. Like even casting is a lot of work.
Yeah, and it was a lot of work, and there was a lot of rounds. I mean, I have to, really, HBO was pretty high on it. Even after our first draft, it felt like it was going to move in the right direction. And I do remember them calling up and saying, okay, we want to shoot a pilot. Mm-hmm. And we had just done a show for Nat Geo before this, where the budgets was, very low. I can't remember what they were, but so HBO calls me, look, the budget's gotta have like a 4 or 5 in front of it. And we're like, 400, 500 grand, that's a ton, but we can probably do it. And it's like, no, 4 or 5 million. And they actually forced us to go up to Silicon Valley to shoot for a few days, bring the whole company up. And we're like, there's nothing up there. We can shoot this in LA, and we ended up shooting like on the side of a freeway. And we had a couple of establishing shots of Google and Facebook and stuff. But, HBO does things and they want it to be authentic. So, all the credit in the world to them.
Right.
And then when we did an edit, it was interesting because the pilot to Silicon Valley has a very big subplot of these 2 women in LA who are tired of the LA scene, and they go up to Silicon Valley because the guys are rich and nice and nerdy. And they meet our heroes in the first episode, and HBO was like, we don't want this storyline. We don't think we need it. So those poor actresses got cut out.
Mm-hmm.
And
Crushing.
It's got to be tough to see a show be that successful, and
you were cut out of it. Yeah. Now, I know you teach at Chapman. It's so interesting because some people are like, is film school worth it? It's like, it depends on who you get as your teacher. Like, honestly, it's like, and I'm sure they're very lucky to have you. What do what's it like with these kids? What are you teaching them? Where are they coming from, I guess?
Yeah, so the class is writing for adult animation. So, half-hour animation shows like King of the Hill and things like that. But, as you well know, writing for animation is very similar to writing for anything. It really is. You still need your 3-act structure and everything. You can just go a little crazier with things. I asked them all, beginning, because a lot of people still ask me, is it worth going to film school? Look, film school is expensive. If you can afford it, it's not a bad thing. And I think what these kids are getting, and I say kids, but a lot of them are in their 20s. I think one's in his 30s. They're writing constantly. Someone's making it. That's good. They're in LA, so they're exposed to people, not Pam or something, but like me, who have done it in the business. We're not just academics who have published books about things, and Brian Behar's down there. There's a bunch of Jill Condon. There's a bunch of people down there who've like done stuff. And last week or the other day, Jamin, the guy who did La La Land, I can never say his last name, and Whiplash.
Yeah.
He was speaking tonight. Austin Butler speaking. Like, they just have a ton of people coming through. So you have exposure to all these people who have done things. Yeah. You also have connections that, if you don't go to film school, you just have to move to LA and try to build yourself. So I think it's a good thing if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, it's not worth stretching to do it, because we moved to LA and we started networking and meeting people and kept writing, and that's really how most people do it.
Do you feel you have to beat misconceptions out of them?
I think this is my first class, and I'm teaching 2nd-year grad students, so they're fairly savvy.
Okay.
I think they've been exposed to it enough that there's not a ton of misconceptions, but there are big gaps in their knowledge, just as it would be with anybody who hasn't been in the business. So look, I teach them things about structure, things about character, things they've probably heard before, but in ways that here's mistakes I've made before. Having a scene have to carry double duty in a half-hour show is really difficult, because you have to change gears within the middle of a scene. Keep it simple. So things like that I teach them, but they definitely light up more to my more anecdotal stories, like what's it like to be in the room, what's it like to work for a showrunner who's marginalizing you, what I remember I talked the other day, I go, yeah, so we have this if-come deal. And I could say, I go, wait, do you guys know what an if-come deal is? And they're like, no. I was like, oh, okay, well, let me explain that. So,
Right. What are you telling about the showrunners who marginalize you? What's your advice on that? I want to hear it.
yeah, it's just tough. I mean, I just keep stressing to them that most showrunners are under so much pressure and stress. All they want is someone to make their life easier. So, the better you can do that, the better off you'll be. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you need, like well, I guess you weren't there at the beginning, but at King of the Hill, Greg was running the show and he had so many things going on. So he was barely in the room.
Right.
So you didn't really know what he wanted, if your story was going to work. So if you saw him in the break room or saw him in the hallway, you would be like, hey, Greg, this is what we're doing. You try to get feedback from him. So that's what I tell them. I go, get as much from the showrunner as you can. And some of them won't give you anything because they're not rooting for you to succeed, but get as much as you can from them when you can, because it doesn't do you any good to try to figure out what they're doing. I mean, you have to do that to some level. The more you know what they want. And that's why I tell these kids are doing beat sheets and outlines. I'm like, be as specific as you can. Don't cheat yourself, because I'm going to read stuff you gloss over and go, oh, I guess they know what they're doing. Right. And then when you give me a script, I'm like, wait, what? If you had done that in your outline, I could have pointed it out at that stage.
Right, exactly. And when you say, you just help the showrunner out. Like, to me, what I want as a showrunner, I just want a draft that doesn't need a page one rewrite. That's how I feel. I mean, is that what you're talking about?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, or look, if you're someone who can have the joke or the story fix in the room that gets you all home sooner, then that's fine too. I mean, at King of the Hill, we had such a big staff. It's an animated show. There were people who turned in great drafts. There were people who weren't great draft writers, but were great in the room,
Right.
So in those days, you could build a big enough team that, you could have a pinch hitter and a utility fielder and a designated hitter. Now the staffs are so small, you really do want someone. But you're right. I mean, to get that draft, it needs a ton of work. You're like, okay, this sets us back so much on everything else. Now I can't be in the editing room. Now we can't push that next week's story forward. It's like, now we got to dig in on this one.
And what I mean, that's exactly the panic that I used to feel. But what is the advice? Like, because the industry is really changing so fast now. Like, what is the advice you give these kids getting out of film school in order to get into the business?
Yeah, look, it's tough. I always try not to be too negative about it, because it's always been tough. It's just tough in a different way.
Right.
What I tell them is, like, look, the movie business is extraordinarily difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be a movie writer, that's fine. But, I urge them, like, TV seems to be a cleaner path.
Yeah.
It used to be with movies, at least you could write a spec, you had some control, where TV, you had to hope somebody hired you. So now, I say, look, if you have a good movie idea, think about it as a series, because, A-list actors are all doing TV. And obviously TV isn't a great state right now with just the quality of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you really do just have to, the basics are right. And network. You got to be in LA. You got to be hitting all the places, because you never know. Look, that meeting with Carolyn Strauss we had, look, it was a good meeting. It wasn't like, we've made it. We've met Carolyn Strauss. And it wasn't until 9 months later that something came of it.
Right. So it's really about getting in those circles.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember people say this all the time. Do I have to be in LA? I'm like, well, you don't have to do anything you don't want, but this is where the fish swim.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, and I think you've probably said before, it's like the material doesn't really speak for itself. Like in movies, it used to, like a good spec script would find, a buyer. Now there's very few ideas that someone's going to go, well, I don't care who this comes from, I want to do it, and there's very few scripts that are good enough that anybody's going to be like, I'm going to put this on the air. It happens. They are out there. But the vast majority of the time, I've been hanging out. I've been going to, Upright Citizens Brigade. I've been helping out on a student film. Right. Hey, that kid I helped out is now on the desk at UTA. Does UTA even exist anymore? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, at CAA. And it's like, you know what? He wants to be an agent, so he's trying to hustle. So he's going to hand the script over to, and suddenly you have a meeting, with an agent, a real agent. So that's how it mostly happens. And you got to be in LA for that.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
So what, And I know you're also. Oh, I want to mention your book, because you and John, your partner, are of all the writing teams I've known, even writers I've known, like you guys are the most entrepreneurial. It seems like you there's nothing, there's a path to do it, and then there's always like, well, let's figure out how else we can do it. You're always like, the hustle doesn't end, and it's always like creating opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and John's much better at that than I am. He has a very entrepreneurial spirit, and I enjoy it, though. I like doing things differently, but he's very innovative in the way he thinks. He's been in Europe for COVID and for a lot of that, just kicking the tires in the international market and making some headway there. But like, I remember like a couple of years ago, we hooked up and we were producing this writer who had done a Academy Award nominated documentary, and he had a half-hour sitcom, and he was Crip Camp, so he was in a wheelchair, and the character was about his story. It was a really cool story, and Obama's company was attached to it, and it was like, this is it's a great script, great project, and we go to Netflix, a Zoom pitch, and they literally were like this. As soon as the camera came on, you're like, okay, this isn't going to be a sale. I mean, we knew it from the get-go. Good lesson is you still pitch your heart out, because you don't want to ever have to blame yourself. If they don't buy it, they don't buy it. But so everything's like, what, it's a great project. Everything was great about it, but you don't know what they want, and you just have so little control. So as we say, like, shopping around town with our briefcase full of wares like Willy Loman is just not an appealing thing. So, John had met this Irish actor, a guy named Richie Stevens, and he was pitching a friend's story. And, that story wasn't quite hooking John. And then Richie started telling him about his own life, and he was a recovered alcoholic, drug addict gangster.
Right.
And he's like, oh, that's interests me. I want you to meet Dave. So we all sat down together, and the guy just had a fascinating life, a fascinating story. We're like, that's a great story to tell.
Right.
And it was John's idea too. He was like, Rich, you did the 12 steps of, recovery. And he goes, yeah. He goes, let's tell your story in 12 steps. And that lends itself to a very nice TV show.
Mm-hmm.
But we were like, do we really want to go pitch a TV show? And so we said, you know what, if we could write this as a book, because it lends itself to a book really well, 12 chapters, the 12 steps. And I always wanted to write a book from the time I was 12, but then we'd have an IP. And Hollywood loves an IP, they love it.
But you still had to pitch it as a book. I mean, you still have to pitch, because you had to pitch it as a book.
Yeah, it's not like that's an easy path either.
Yeah.
But look, we had been out here long enough. We knew, Jake Steinfeld, Body by Jake, who had published several successful books. He goes, well, let me introduce you to my book agent. She publishes a lot of nonfiction authors. We pitched to her. She said, okay, this is a good hook. I think I can sell it. She turned around and sold it to a publisher. So then, then we wrote the book, which took a while. But it's like, now we have a book, which is an IP, which we can set up, and we have much more control over it. Yeah. And we're making very good headway in setting it up as a TV show now.
Right, because you bring more to the table. This is what I always say. What else can you bring to the table?
Yeah.
And and it was an interesting read. I read it. It was wonderful. So, yeah, I give you guys a lot of credit, a lot of hustle.
Well, look, a lot of it comes from boredom, and in all honesty, there's certain things we can do because of our track record. So when I'm advising like younger writers, I'm like, well, this won't necessarily work for you,
right?
But you really do. I mean, the business has become so consolidated. It's also a weird business where like almost the quality or success of the entertainment doesn't matter. I mean, Apple's trying to sell, iPhones, Amazon's trying to sell everything else in the world. So it doesn't have the same sort of metric as it used to when you were pitching a show. So it's difficult. But, like, I met this young writer, and she wrote a script that I really liked a lot. And, we tried to set it up around town, didn't have a ton of luck. And then we learned she has dual citizenship, I guess, triple citizenship from Belgium and from France. And it's like, oh, an American writer who's got, some talent, who can go over to the EU and tap into the money over there with their subsidies, because she is a huge thing. So now we're making headway on that. Right. So there's a lot of different angles that anybody starting out might have access to that they can do, instead of really just waiting for an agent or a writer or a studio to notice them.
Right. Stop begging and start making things happen yourself. Yeah. I think so. Well, tell us, tell everyone the name of that book so they can find it on Amazon.
It's called The Gangster's Guide to Sobriety.
Yeah, he's a charming fella. That guy.
Yeah, he's a real Irishman with the Irish accent, and Like if you read the book, I mean, he did some horrible things, and he's always like shocked that people are nice to him because of the horrible things he's done. But he's also a very gentle, sweet guy. He was an addict, and
Right.
he made a lot of bad decisions from there.
Right.
But yeah, he's a good guy.
It's a good story. Yeah, a lot of good stories. Dave Krinsky, I'd give you a hug. If
I
you
want
weren't-
one.
If you weren't on Zoom. Thank
Wow.
you so much. Thank you. Is there any other parting words that we can get from you, or any other wisdom? Did we tap you out?
I don't know about wisdom, but I know that a lot of people are tuning into you and checking your stuff out. And I just remember at King of the Hill, we worked together on a bunch of shows. Like you were always the fastest guy in the room. I was always just so amazed. And jokes never translate. It was your joke, so you'll sound like an idiot. But I just still remember we're all sitting in the writers' room, and someone comes in and says, "Oh, I was down in Century City and I saw that Bewitched movie with Will Ferrell and Nicole Kidman."
Yeah.
And they go, "How was it?" He goes, "Well, I didn't really get to see it all because there was a fire alarm and the fire department came in, and you yell, 'Everybody out, there's a bomb on the screen.'"
I don't remember that. I have no memory of that at all.
My other
I-
my other favorite memory of King of the Hill was you remember sitting in that back chair,
Mhm.
digging a hole.
Yes, and I found a picture of it. That was. I'll explain for our viewers. We had so there was a while on King of the Hill when we were working like 20 hours a day, and I felt like a hostage. And I had this one big chair that had big wooden legs on it, and I took like a thumbtack, and I started digging a hole like in the Shawshank Redemption. Like I was digging a hole out of that, and it took months to finally, when I finally broke through, I put a picture of Rita Hayworth on it so you couldn't see I was digging. And this is ballsy for a new guy because I was like, I was destroying furniture and I was telling everyone that I was not happy to be there 20 hours a day.
Well, the
And
thing
then-
was, we all kind of bought into this fantasy that when you broke through, we'd be free.
Right.
And it was so depressing when you broke through, and we were like,
We're all still
"All
there.
right, back to work."
I remember Garland was particularly interested in it. She's like, well, because she was like, when are you going to get through? How funny. That's so. I'm glad you reminded me that because I forget everything. That's the advantage of working with people is they can remind you of these stories. I don't remember any of that. I don't remember that Bewitched.
Yeah, yeah, that was very funny. But no, this was a pleasure, and I love what you're doing, and I think you're giving information to people that's kind of hard to get anywhere else. You can learn craft, you can learn certain things, but you have so much input that's useful on a day-to-day level for aspiring writers. So good on you.
Thank you so much, Dave Krinsky. Thank you again, and
Pleasure to see you.
everyone. So stay tuned. We got more episodes coming up next week. Thanks, and we have what else we got? We got a free webinar once a month. Sign up for that on my website, michaeljamin.com, and my free newsletter. All good stuff. Go to michaeljamin.com and you can find it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much.
This has been an episode of Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin and Phil Hudson. If you'd like to support this podcast, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing this podcast with someone who needs to hear today's subject. For free daily screenwriting tips, follow Michael on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Michael Jamin Writer. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Phil A. Hudson. This episode was produced by Phil Hudson and edited by Dallas Crane. Until next time, keep writing.